All right, so today we're going to be talking about layers, and the assignment that I had posted as due for Sunday, which you all turned in, I'm going to open that back up for a couple more days because layers are going to apply to that assignment. So there's going to be just a little bit more that you have to do to that basketball court assignment before you're totally finished with it. So as part of your assignment for this week, you're going to be doing that, and then you have a couple other things you need to do, okay? Layers. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about before we actually discuss layers here, okay? I'm going to open up Revit here really quick. Has anybody worked with Revit before? Yeah, a little bit? Good. Okay, so Revit will illustrate the idea of layers pretty evidently. So I'm going to hurry and draw something in here really quick and show you the idea of layers. Okay, so I'm going to open up this one. We also teach Revit online. I don't know if you guys, it's good for the engineers to start working with Revit as well, because while I think engineering was a little bit behind architecture in converting to Revit, you know, for a lot of larger projects, you guys are getting there, so jump on the bandwagon, right? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about layers, and with that topic is going to come the idea of line weights in AutoCAD, or I guess in construction drawings, really, okay? So the way that you sort of graphically organize a set of construction drawings is according to line weight, okay? And a line weight, has anybody ever hand drafted in here? One person, okay. We're I'm just waiting for the day when we have 0 people that have hand drafted in here. But when you hand drafted, the idea of line weights were illustrated with different pencils, right? So if you wanted to create a very thick line or a thick line weight, you would get out a very thick and heavy pencil, right? And if you wanted to create a very thin line on your drawings, you'd put the thick pencil away and you'd pick up a very thin pencil and you would draw lines with a thin pencil, okay? Now that we have technology, we have to create those thick and thin lines in a different manner using the technology, okay? In Revit, which is the program I'm in, line weights, they're defined, but they're sort of defined for you out of the box, right? We don't have to really go in and manually define line weights in Revit, which is nice, which is good and bad, I guess we'll say. There's a huge discussion right now, you know, because Revit, a lot of people say Revit doesn't have as great of a graphic quality of drawings as AutoCAD does. Anyway. But you can see the idea of a line weight here, right? We see very thick and heavy outlines of the wall. This is the wall cut and floor plan view, right? And then we sort of see, in comparison to like the wall thickness, the line, these stair lines, they're a lot thinner. Do you see that? So the wall has a very thick, heavy outline. Let me just change this real quick. There we go. Oh, well, that didn't help me out. I needed it. And the stairs have a thinner pen weight that was used. And it looks like the windows are very similar. The lines with regard to the windows are very similar to the wall here, but I would bet that they're slightly thinner than the wall actually, okay? And then we have this thinner line weight down here that you see that looks like kind of a windowsill or maybe a floor line or something, right? And then if we look over here at like the doors, we have the door panel, like this is the you know, wooden panel of the door, and that has kind of a medium pen weight, right? If the wall has a heavy pen weight, this is kind of a medium, and then this swing is illustrated with a light pen weight, okay? So as we go around and we just kind of browse these drawings, we're going to see a lot of different pen weights illustrated. Furniture has kind of a thinner pen weight, okay? And the reason that we have these different thicknesses of lines in AutoCAD is so that the drawings can be read, okay? So a contractor that takes these drawings and wants to build from them, you know, essentially you want your drawings to read like a book, okay? But just in terms of line weight. So when you read a book, you open the book and you look at one side of the page, you read from the left to the right, right? And then you turn the page and you start at the top and you read from the top to the bottom, and you go to the next page and do the same thing, right? There's an order to things, and you know that from habit. So when you look at a set of drawings, immediately the first thing you should see is that thickest pen weight, which is going to be, we'll call the most important architectural elements, okay? So when we print this set of drawings, we want kind of the most important architectural elements to be the thickest pen weight, so that when somebody looks at it, they can immediately and visually recognize those items, okay? So walls, doors, windows. Things that sort of enclose the space are the structural pieces of the building. We want those to read the heaviest, okay? So the most important elements are the thickest elements, okay? Doors, walls, and windows. Great. We have kind of a secondary level of objects that come next, okay? They're going to be, excuse me, maybe a little bit less important than those major architectural elements, okay? Things that go inside of the space, like maybe furniture, millwork, plumbing fixtures, things like that. Those are going to be slightly thinner pen weights, okay? Because we want those to be read second. We want the person reading your drawings to first read the important architectural elements, then we want them to read the elements within the space, okay? And then the next thing we want them to read will be things maybe on the floor, like flooring patterns. Is there tile? Is there carpet? Okay, and then the next thing we want them to read is the annotation, right? So the text, leaders, descriptive type elements, right? So instead of reading like a book where you start on one side of the page and read to the end and then start at the top and go to the bottom, we're going to read from heaviest pen weight to lightest pen weight, okay? And that's how you're going to create your drawings, all right? Now, excuse me, like I said before, the walls and like the windows right here, there's not a huge difference between the thickness of the pen weight here. When we're drawing ours in AutoCAD, we'll have a little bit more of a definition between the two, okay? If you're thinking of things in terms of importance here, I would say that the very first and most important thing in a set of drawings that graphically will be the heaviest will be the walls. Okay, so walls will be heaviest, doors and windows will be the next heaviest. So if we were, going to define pen weights, we would say the walls are heavy, the windows and doors are medium, and then things like stairs and furniture and plumbing fixtures, those would be light, okay? And then the flooring would be fine, all right? Let me, I'm not gonna write it on the board because I want this to show up here in our video. I'm gonna write this here in AutoCAD, okay? So I'm going to put a little piece of text here. Hopefully it's large enough to see. So walls are going to be heavy. Okay. If I can spell, doors and windows will be medium. And things in the space will be things like stairs, millwork, like cabinets, right? Furniture, plumbing fixtures, right? Those will be thin. And then things on the floor, like flooring pattern, will be fine, okay? When we get a little bit further into AutoCAD, we'll have some other things like hatch, okay, that will be on a hatch layer. And we'll talk about new layers as we get to them, okay? So we have walls, doors, stairs, floor, like flooring, fine. So we have heavy, medium, thin, fine, okay? I'm going to pop back over here to Revit one more time to kind of illustrate what's happening here. So the reason that things are assigned these different pen weights, number one, importance of elements, architectural elements, but also pen weights are assigned according to where your floor plate is cut, okay? So definition of a floor plan, it would be if you took a building like the building that we're in and you cut it off horizontally, like slice the top off, right? And look down at it, what you would see would be the floor plan, right? So if we took this room and we cut it horizontally all the way across, right? At 3 to 4 feet above the floor, and then we got rid of the top and looked down on it, that would be the floor plan that you see, all right? So the thicknesses in pen weights, we have the thickness of pen weights. They're really related to the floor plan view. And the floor plan view is related to the idea that if you take a building and cut the top off of it between 3 and 4 feet and get rid of the top, what you look down upon is what you see in the floor plan. Okay? To add another layer to that, that cut view is what you see in the floor plan, and the thicknesses are also related to the field of vision that you see, right? So if you cut the floor plan, you take this building, you cut it at 3 to 4 feet above the floor plate, and you look down, the things that you cut first are going to be the heaviest. And that would be, generally speaking, the walls, the doors, the windows, right? So if I cut it 4 foot here, I would hit the window, I'd hit the wall, I'd hit the window, I'd hit the wall, all the way around the room. Those would be the heaviest thing, right? So the next thing, if I were to look down further into the floor plan, would be the furniture, right? Of course, the millwork, the plumbing fixtures. And then below that, we would see the floor, right? So that's what the pen weights are really kind of associated with in an architectural floor plan, okay? If you're thinking in terms of engineering, line weights a lot of times, like if you're a mechanical engineer, and I mean that like a nuts and bolts, right? You're doing product specification. Line weights are going to be associated with things like what you cut. So if you're working with a laser cutter, magenta means score the item, and cyan means cut, right? So if you're cutting out a piece of plexiglass, cyan would mean cut it, and magenta would mean score it, like put a pattern on it, okay? So that's what line weights are going to be used for in engineering, all right? But any other type of construction drawing, we had somebody who's going into mining here. I was thinking it was you, right? Even included in that is you, right? So line weights are going to be associated with the graphic quality of a set of drawings, so you can read it, essentially, okay? I would assume that you're going to do a lot of topography in mining, right? So like major contours in a topographic surface, those will be like a very thick pen weight, right? And minor contours would be a very thin pen weight. So even that graphic idea translates to something like that, essentially. Okay. Does everybody understand why we use pen weights then? I mean, really the idea is that so that you can graphically read a set of drawings, so you know what is what, okay? And then the idea of where they come from is from the formation of the floor plan, where you cut the building horizontally, get rid of the top, and what you see is, is really, what the pen weights you see is really associated with that cut, okay? All right, so that was a pretty long explanation, right, for what we're going to get to today, and that is layers, all right? So when we look here in AutoCAD, you may have run into this before. I noticed on a couple of your assignments that a few of you sort of jumped ahead and did some layering, right? But really, if your lines are colored in AutoCAD, if you're drawing with a colored line, that means that it's associated with a layer, okay? So layers do a few different things in AutoCAD. And I'm just going to browse over here to my lecture notes so that I don't forget any of the things that layers do. Let's see here real quick. Okay. They do a lot of things. Layers are really helpful. So layers, the first thing that they can do is associate line weights with lines in AutoCAD, okay? So that's one thing. The second thing that they can do is they can organize your lines in AutoCAD, all right? I'm going to come back over here to the Start menu, and I'm going to see if I can open up, I want to open up one of their sample drawings. Here we go. I hope I can find one. Oh, wonderful. Here we go. Let's find a good one here. Residential, building section, stair. I think we were good here. Okay, so I'm going to open up a sample drawing here in AutoCAD. Close that out, go back over to here. Okay. So when you get to the point where you have drawn a very complicated drawing in AutoCAD, you're going to have millions of lines in there, right? So this is a drawing, and it looks like it has some ceiling type elements in it. This one is a little bit disorganized, I'll say, maybe a little bit. But this is what a typical kind of drawing would look like in AutoCAD, right? You see lines happening, you see this stuff over here, which is hatch. All of the lines have a different color association with them, right? And that color association will, when you print the drawing, give a thickness to those lines, okay? But this is generally what it looks like, and you'll have millions of these lines, all right? So in addition to allowing lines to have a line weight in AutoCAD, layers will allow you to organize lines in AutoCAD, okay? And lines are organized according to architectural element. So what that means is, hopefully their layers are correct in here. You're going to create layers according to architectural element, okay, or whatever you're doing, right? Whether you're an engineer or an architect or whatever, you're going to group your layers and your lines onto those layers according to element. So for example, all the doors are going to be on one layer, okay? All the walls will be on another layer. All of the plumbing fixtures will be on another layer, right? You guys get the idea. So here we have wall base, architectural plan, dimensions. So this is our dimension layer right here, and I'll just, looks like they've broken it out a little bit, but can you see how when I freeze or turn off some of these different layers, it turns off groups of elements, okay? And that's what layers will do. It will allow you to group similar elements onto the same layer, and you can organize them. So you can turn them all off, you can turn them all on, you can make kind of global changes to them at the same time, okay? So layers control line weights, they control organization. They also control editability. So I have the capability of taking a layer and all of the things associated with that layer and locking them down, meaning they're not editable. So if I wanted to take these windows and I wanted to make them not editable, I would take the layer and I would lock it, okay? And that would make it so that whether it's me or somebody else working on my drawing, they wouldn't be able to edit those until they are unlocked, okay? Let's see here. Okay. Now, one final thing I want to explain about layers before I show you how to create them and manipulate them. I want you to understand the idea that layers sort of function all together, okay? And what that means is I might have 50 different layers controlling this one drawing, but I can see them all at the same time if they're all turned on. So if you want to think of layers in terms of hand drafting, a layer would be like a transparent piece of paper. And, you know, on the wall layer, I would draw all my walls, okay, on this transparent piece of paper, and then I'd put it on my desk. And then I would draw all my doors, and then I'd lay that door, you know, transparent piece of paper over the wall one, and I would see the walls and the doors working together, right, even though they're on different layers. Okay, or I could take another transparent piece of paper and I could draw all the windows on it, and then I lay it on top of the other two, and I can still see the doors, I can still see the walls, but now I've added a layer of windows and I can see the windows, right? So the layers, when they're all turned on, they all function together, they all show, all right, but they're all separate, all right? So that's one thing I kind of want to make clear, okay? So I'm going to go back to my start menu here. Actually, I'm going to go to this line weight chart. So this is a little diagram showing all of the different pen weights that we have here in AutoCAD, okay? So what this means, I'm going to flip back and forth between a couple of things here, okay? And I'll give you these. Actually, I don't think these are uploaded to the assignment yet, but I will upload them. What we have here is, this is a printed PDF, okay? So this is what this AutoCAD file that I have open here, this is what it looks like when it's turned into a PDF file. All right, so this just really kind of illustrates the idea that when I print my AutoCAD file, the colors sort of come to life, right? So color number 1, pen number 1 is this thickness. And when I go to AutoCAD, color number 1, pen number 1 is red, okay? And when I go back here, I see color number 2, pen number 2 is this thickness, right? And when I go back to AutoCAD, I can see that color number 2, pen number 2 is yellow, all right? So in AutoCAD, they're colors, but when we create a PDF or we physically print them to a printer, they turn into these thick line weights, okay? At the bottom of this page, we see what the actual measurements of those are. So pen number 1 is red. It prints this thickness, and it's 0.7 millimeters. All right, that's the actual thickness of the pen weight. So when I say things like heavy, medium, fine, thin, we have heavy, right? We have medium, we have thin, we have fine, and they grade down from there. All right. One question I always sort of get with this exercise, because I'm going to tell you right now, we're really only going to be using probably these colors, okay? Those first 12 colors. And you'll learn why in a little bit, but you know, one question I always get is, well, why? We've got all of these other fantastic colors, right? Do we have any interior designers in here? The interior designers are always like, but I really like this series of colors, or the blues. Why can't we use those if they mean the same thing, right? And the reasoning behind that is, when you go and you work in an office, all right, pen number 1, color number 1 red is, generally speaking, it follows the national CAD standard, right? There's a bunch of people out there that got together and said, hey, we need to create some standards for AutoCAD. Basically, we need to make it so that people who are using AutoCAD for a specific task like engineering or architecture, right, we want to make sure we're on the same page about how we do things, so that when you work at Office A and then you go to work at Office B, you know what you're doing, right? So there's kind of 2 standards that I've seen. One is the National CAD standard, and the other is the opposite of that. And I've only really worked in an office, one office where that happened, okay? So by and far, the National CAD standard supports color 1 being very heavy and color number 12 being very thin, okay? Just like we see here. Color number 1 is heavy and color number 12 is, well, somewhat thin, right? Color number 8 is by far the thinnest, okay? So the National CAD standard supports this pen weight standard, all right? The other pen standard that I have seen is the opposite. So going from color number 8 being the thickest to number 1 being the thinnest. So it's going to be one or the other. But likely you're going to see it, pen number 1 is thickest, and we grade all the way down, okay? So, you know, you look at this and you say, well, it looks like pen number 6 is the heaviest here. Why can't I use these green colors instead of this red color, right? And the answer is you could, okay? You could. They really do kind of illustrate the same thing, all right? But it's not very standard, meaning if I were to go into an office, I could open up their layer dialog box and I would see red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, and I would know what that means, okay? And these colors, they come, and I'm going to show you how to work this dialog box here pretty quick, but they come from this layer dialog box, okay? And you can see we have these index colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay? And then we have these shades right here, all right? You see that? So colors 1 through 9 are all indicated right here as index colors. All of those other colors that you see that are still correct, those are these colors up here. See all these up here? Okay. So this is index color 195, 202, and I'm sure I could find them over here somewhere, right? But the reason that you're going to see, let me hit cancel, well, I won't cancel, but the reason you're going to see these first few colors the most commonly is because they are right here, okay? And so to make it easy and to be consistent, most firms will say we're going to start with index color 1. 1 is going to be our thickest pen weight, and we're going to grade down from there, okay? You could use these up here, but likely if you do that, even if it's correct, somebody in the office is going to say, who's using those weird numbered, you know, colors? I don't really understand what color 232 is. And you're like, well, it means pen number 1. And somebody will say to you, well, then just use pen number 1 because that's what we all know, right? So you could use these over here, and I like to show you that we do have them, but by and far you're going to be using these over here, and that's just kind of industry standard, okay? Oh, we've got a floating dot syndrome in here. I keep zooming extents and it goes off my screen. All right, does anybody have any questions for me so far? Okay. All right, so we know what layers do. They organize, they set pen weights. You can lock them so that people can't edit every aspect of your drawing. This is what all of our layers look like in AutoCAD. They're colored. It's a color-based line weight system. And this is what our layers look like when they're plotted, okay? All right. I'm gonna open up a file on our CAD Common. Let's see. And it's going to be called Arch 1310 Drawings Layers Floor Plan, or Layers. Let's open up Layers. There's one, and Layers Floor Plan. Oh. So 2 layers and then layer floor plan. Okay. So this is something that you might be a little bit more comfortable seeing, right? Just a simple floor plan, right? And this floor plan has layers associated with it, of course, okay? So the first thing I want to go over today is I want to go over the layer dialog box. I want to show you how to create layers, how to name them, how to assign a color, okay? And so I think we'll stop there. After that, we'll stop there today. And then when we come back on Wednesday, I'm going to really get into how we name those things, okay? And then we'll talk about the assignment and all that good stuff, all right? Okay, so first thing, let's go to the layer properties dialog box. I want to talk about that, define things in there. If we go to the home tab and you come all the way down here to layers, okay, there's an icon right here called layer properties, okay, and I'm going to click on it. Click, okay, and when I click on that, this is the layer dialog box, all right, and oops, sorry. And if you click on this little tab over here, you can kind of drag it around your screen, right? I kind of like to keep mine somewhat over here so that it doesn't block my entire drawing space. I can still navigate in model space when I have it open, okay? We have this little auto hide right here, so if you want to click on that, it will kind of close it up, but it still remains. I can click on it again and open it up, okay? If yours looks somewhat like this, well, let me just show you the things that will make it look different from mine, I guess I should say. There's this little auto hide, we'll say it's an auto hide right here that I can click on, and it hides the filters right there, right? And so I can open it and I can close it. That looks good. The first thing I have over here is the name of the layer in the drawing, okay? So here's the name. I can change the thickness of this and all these other little categories just kind of by clicking in between them, just like Excel, right? And I can make them larger, smaller, whatever. I'm going to make these a little bit larger just so that you can read actually what we're doing here, okay? There we go. Okay, so name of the layer right here. We have on, freeze, lock, plot, color, and line weight again, or line type and line weight, okay? And, oh yeah, there's plot right there, good. So these are going to be the things I'm going to define, okay? And then up here, just above the name, we have a few other things. We have layer state manager. We're not going to talk about that right now. We have new layer. We have new layer frozen through the viewport. We're not going to talk about that. We have delete layer, okay, and then we have set current. The three we're going to talk about are new, we have frozen, or sorry, new, delete, and then make current, okay? All right, so you're going to see over here, we also have one that I forgot to say, status. So this little icon just sort of indicates that it's a layer, all right? And they're doing that using a little piece of paper, right? Super cute. Our transparent piece of paper talk, right? This little green check mark means that this is the current layer. And what that means is that if I go to click on the line tool and if I start drawing, I'm going to start drawing on the layer that is current. So the one with the check mark by it. That means that if I draw right now, I'm going to be drawing on with a yellow line. Okay, escape. All right. If I want to make another layer current, I can double click on the little layer status right here. Click, click, very fast, becomes current. Okay, And then when I go to draw my line, now I'm drawing on a cyan layer. Okay. If I, now this layer that I was once on, this yellow layer, which was, I think it was this, hopefully, a wall exterior, I can turn it off visually. I can freeze in thought. I can lock it if I need to. Okay. All right, we'll come back to that. So to make a layer current, which means I want to draw with it, I double click over here on the layer I want to draw with. Okay. To name a layer, I'll show you how to do that when we create a layer, but I'm also right now, since we have some existing layers, I'm going to click once on a layer, click a second time, and you'll notice that it comes up editable. So I can change this now. Case dash new, enter. All right. So to change the name, I can click again, delete, 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 A4, enter. All right. These different tools right here, we have on, off. All right. And we also have freeze thaw right next to it. I should figure out why we still currently have this on, off functionality in AutoCAD. It's got to be it's not for architecture, I wouldn't assume. These two things kind of essentially do the same, but with one big difference, okay? So these two options, they control the visibility of layers on your screen, all right? So if I click on this little light bulb, you see how it's a little light bulb? Let's see if I can zoom in there a little bit. No, it won't let me. If I click on the little light bulb, A-door, click, you notice that my doors turn off, okay? And the light bulb looks like it's blackened out, okay? If I click on it again, they turn on. It's easy, right? I have this freeze thaw option, A-door. So if I click on the freeze thaw option, same thing happens. Okay? The main difference between on, off, and freeze thaw is that if I freeze something, it turns it off and it then makes that layer uneditable, meaning I can't go over and click on line and draw on A-door. It just won't let me, right? If I click the off button, so my doors are not visible, and then I double click, click to make that layer my current layer, I could then come up here and I could start drawing. But you're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't see any lines on your screen, right? Okay, and it's still, I don't understand why, I should probably Google this, right? There's probably a million answers out there. But the difference between these two is that with on, off, I'm still allowed to draw. I'm going to turn that back on, even though I can't see it. Invisible drawing, right? So you saw me clicking around. That's what was happening. And the reason it wasn't showing is because my layer was turned off, okay? I can't for the life of me think of why you would want to draw blindly. It just doesn't make sense, okay? So my best advice here, and this is something that we follow a lot in architecture, you know, there may be some engineering use for it, but when I say something like turn that layer off or freeze that layer or make it not visible, and this is generally across the board in the industry, we always mean freeze and thaw. Okay, so you're never going to be using the on-off functionality. It doesn't make sense because you really open yourself up for error when you use that functionality, right? And you think, well, even if I use it and I accidentally draw a line, well, I can delete it, right? Well, sure, but usually when you're making this error, you turn it off and then you forget that you've turned it off. And you think you're actually maybe thinking you're drawing on a different layer. You hit line, you start drawing, you're like, hey, what's wrong? Oh, something's wrong. And you've already drawn 4 lines by the time you go back to investigate why your lines aren't visible on the screen. And at that point, you could either forget to delete them, you could delete them, but maybe leave one on the screen that you didn't see, right? And then somebody interprets that as something that shouldn't be there, okay? So using the on-off functionality will really set yourself up for error, okay? So whenever we say turn that layer off, turn that layer on, freeze that layer, thaw that layer, any one of those terms that I use really means freeze and thaw, okay? So if I say turn that layer off, I don't actually mean use the light bulb. I'm just telling you to freeze that layer, all right? And you'll hear that across industry. Freeze thaw will allow you to visually turn things off on the screen, but I can't make a layer current that is frozen. So if I double click on floor, click, it'll say the selected layer cannot be made current. Okay, so AutoCAD is locking out that functionality of being able to draw invisible lines. Okay, so it's just a much more safe functionality. I'm going to hit Control Z. There we go, until we get rid of all of that, those lines I drew. Okay. So on-off freeze thaw, same functionality, but we're not going to use on-off. We're just going to use freeze thaw. Lock will allow you to make a layer not editable. So if I click on this little lock box right here on A, let's do the walls actually. A wall exterior, if I hit the little lock, you see that yellow, how it dimmed? It's bright and it dimmed, okay? So now if I hover over that line, I get a little lock, and if I select it and I hit delete, nothing happens, okay? And nothing happens because it's locked, so it's not editable right now, okay? People do that in drawings because they want to preserve something. So you've worked for hours and hours and hours on a floor plan, right? And you just don't want it to get messed up, right? By somebody else working on it that maybe they know what they're doing, but they're uninformed as to why you have designed it the way you have, right? There's always a reason. So to make these things not editable, you can lock them, all right? And at least if somebody needs to edit it, they will ask you the question, hey, why did you lock that out? You know, what is going on here that you don't want me to edit it, okay? So we can lock layers. We can also make it so that layers won't print. And this little, we have a plot definition here, okay? If I click on that, see I get a little slash right here? So plot, right? If there's not a slash, it will plot. If there is one, it won't, but it will still be visible on the screen, okay? So there are going to be things that you want to put on your drawings that maybe you don't want to print, okay? Notes are a perfect example. So you can create a non-printable layer, and you can add notes off to the side like, hey, Shelly, will you add this, delete this, stretch this, edit this, and then send it over to me by noon, right? Or if you have dimensions that you're unsure of, you're working through something you're unsure of, you could put it on a non-printable layer, so if someone were to print it and give it to the client, at least that information wouldn't show up, okay? This is by far, this one and the pen weights, but this is by far one of the biggest errors I see affecting beginning AutoCAD students, right? You come in here and your task is to create some new layers. You say, I know how to create a layer. I know how to name a layer. I know how to give it a color, right? And then we get to printing and you go to print and you're like, oh, shoot. It's there on the screen, but it's not printing for me, right? The first thing I say is check your layer dialog box to make sure it's set to print. And everybody always says, oh, it is. But guess what? It never is. So that's going to be one of the number one things that you'll have an error with. And the reason it happens is because if you create a new layer, which I'm going to show you how to do now, and it's set to not print, right? Creating a new layer is very easy. I can click on new layer. Okay, I get a new layer with no name. Do you see that this new layer assumes the properties of the layer that was selected when you created the new layer, right? So it's locked, it's non-printable, it's yellow, right? Yellow layer, enter. I just created a new layer, all right? So this is the new layer function. Click new layer. Okay, so students will come in and they will start creating all these new layers, not paying attention to the fact that it's set to not print, and you think because you didn't set it to print, right, it's printable. Well, this functionality, these settings can carry over, right? So it's very easy to remedy. You just click, 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 right? Excuse me. All of those changes are undone, and things will print now, okay? The next thing I want to talk about is how to change the color of your layer. So we can change the name. We can change the visibility. Oh, it looks like they're going. Okay, so to change the color of the layer is very simple. We click here on the color yellow, and the select color dialog box pops up. okay? And again, really don't be selecting any colors up here, none of the index, none of these true color, none of these color books. I know they look nice. Trust me, when I started AutoCAD, I was very like, I want everything to be coordinated and to look aesthetically pleasing, right? But you know, you sort of forget that really the colors don't matter, because when you print, it's black and white and it's just pen weights anyway. Okay, so here we can change the color. This layer is called A Wall Exterior. Well, let's make it red. I'm going to hit OK. And then you notice that all of the items that were on that layer changed to color, right? Click on red. Let's change it to magenta. OK. All those items change. All right. So I think once you do your assignment and you start drawing a little bit, you're really going to start understanding that, you know, layers organize, and anything on a layer, if you make a change to that layer, every object on that layer is affected. Okay, it's a global change, essentially. Okay, two other things I want to point out, and we have a line type here, all right? The line type defines what the line looks like when it's printed, and what that means is, I'm going to go back over to Revit here real quick and show you what that means. Let's go to line styles. Okay. So in AutoCAD, just like in Revit here, do you see we have, well, I want to show, maybe over here is better. Okay. We have a lot of different line types, okay? And line types mean things like we have dashed lines, we have property lines, we have solid lines. And the patterns, where's our line? Hold on one second. I'm failing here just doing a line. There's a dash line, for example, right? And if I wanted to change that line weight, here are all of the different ways that it can look, right? We have a lining line, center line, dash line, dash dot, property lines, right? Dash dot. We have just dots. We have grid lines. We have hidden lines. Hidden is another name for a dashed line, okay? Loose dash, overhead, point, raster line, just a lot of stuff, okay? And so this is the same thing as looking here in AutoCAD. This line type, that's what that defines. So if I click on continuous, it says, here's my line type. There's the appearance solid line. If I want to get other line types, I'm going to have to load them for the first time. So I click load. I would stick to loading lines that are like border, ones that don't have ACAD or ISO in front of them. So basically kind of these simply named ones, okay? But stay away from the ISO and the AutoCAD. So in this case, I'll choose something like dot, and I'll hit OK. I'll hit OK again, all right? And so now, click on it, hit OK, and you see my lines turn into dots, okay? I can click on dot again and change it back to continuous and hit OK, and things look good, all right? So we can name layers, we can turn on and off. We're not going to turn on and off though. We're going to freeze thaw instead to control visibility. We can lock layers so they can't be edited. We can make them printable or not printable. We can change the color, which then corresponds to the thickness of the pen weight. We can change how the line type is defined. So is it dashed? Is it dots? Is it solid line? And then this final thing right here, this is called line weight. We're going to leave it to say default. Now, this is a highly contested topic, right? Because it depends on the office you work in, but I would say very largely that the way I'm going to show you how to do this is the way we've done it in every office I've ever worked in, okay? I think the exception to this would be if you work solely alone. Do we have anybody here that wants to open their own business and work by themselves? Okay. Maybe, yeah, okay. So you may choose to do something different, right? But this line weight area, the way that I'm going to show you is kind of by and far the way I've seen it done in industry, okay? I talked about how in the very beginning of AutoCAD, when we started this class, that AutoCAD is a very generic software actually, right? We are able to open it up, and a lot of different, very different disciplines are able to use this software, right? And the reason we're able to do that is because we can customize it to whatever discipline we're working with, right? So what that also translates into is that we can customize our line weights per discipline, right? So in architecture, we'll have, don't get scared, but thousands of layers, honestly. New layers, existing layers, demo layers, above layers, below layers, a lot of different things, right? Consultants to architects like electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, you'll have a lot of layers as well, but they'll be, number one, named differently, and they'll also have different colors. They may be a little bit more grayed out, okay? But the overlying theme is that when we print them, we want them to have line weights, all right? So going back to the idea that AutoCAD is very generic, okay? There's two ways that we can print our line weights to have a thickness. We can use a pen file, which that's the way I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? I'm going to give you a pen file, not today, and I'm going to show you how to use that pen file to make AutoCAD print your lines the thickness they should be, all right? The idea behind a pen file is that you could assign red to a layer in this file, and somebody could give you their pen file, and that pen file would define what red means, okay? It's confusing if you haven't done it before, but within the same office. So for example, I worked at a firm where we did work for National Park Service, okay? We did things as an office one way. National Park Service liked things done a completely different way, all right? So would it make sense for us to totally change the way that we do things on an office level just to accommodate one client? Or would it make sense that we do things generically and then use something like a pen file to achieve what we want to achieve, right? And the answer is, well, of course, we're going to use a pen file to achieve what we want to achieve. So the genericness allows us to use a separate file to define things without changing the interface of AutoCAD. I know it's a lot. If you haven't done it before, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But basically, what this will allow you to do, if I change this, right, you see how this has all those pen weights defined, okay? So I could take this and say, well, red means 1.2 millimeters, okay. And by changing this right here, I built in the thickness of that line weight, all right? So that, whoever uses this, that's what that means. Even if I have different clients using different pen weights in the same office. This will make more sense again when we get our pen file. So this makes this very specific. And if I want to change it, I have to change all of these, right, to suit whatever client I'm working with, as opposed to just using a pen file and keeping these generic, okay? I'm going to click on that again, and I'm going to change this back to default. That was a really long explanation just to tell you, just leave these default, all right, so that we can manipulate them using another file, changing it in and out, okay? If you define these in here, it makes it very specific, and if you have to alter them for a client, it's very cumbersome. Now, if you're working on your own and you don't have a lot of clients that need, these specific things changed, it might make sense for you to build these in, okay? One of our other instructors, Becky, she teaches Tuesday, Thursday. She works on her own, and so instead of using the pen file system that I'm going to show you, she changes her pen weights in here, and it works for her because that's how she works, right? At every other office, out there that I've worked at, we've never done that, okay? Any questions on anything so far yet? Okay, all right. So we can create new layers. We can rename them or name them. We can visually manipulate them, lock them, make them printable or not printable, change the color, change the way the line reads, right, whether it's dashed or dots or whatever. And then we can change the line weight in here, which we're not going to do. So this always remains default. Yes?
Is there a reason why the depth points
Yes, so that's a good question. So we have now, I'm glad you said that because I probably would have forgotten to talk about these other two special layers. Okay, so within our layer dialog box, you can create new layers, you can delete new layers. There are 2 layers in there by default that you just really for now don't want to use, okay? We have layer 0 up here and we have a def points layer, all right? So the def points layer is a special layer and it is set to never print. So no matter what you do, right, Virginia noticed, hey, the def points layer, that printer is grayed out and I can't edit it, right? And that's because this is a systems layer that can't be altered. The def points layer is used for dimensions, all right? I can, if I accidentally double clicked on it, I could click on line and I could draw lines with it, okay? But those lines, when I went to print my drawing, would never print and there's no way I could change that setting, okay? So that's what def points is for. The other layer we have here that's default is the layer 0. So this layer can't be edited, the color. Oh, I guess you can't. I questioned myself when I said that because I think you can change it now. In the past, you haven't been able to. But layer 0 has another type of system functionality where we use it to create layers. And layer 0 has the ability to allow items to assume layer properties. Okay, we'll get to that in a couple weeks. That is another layer that while if I double click on it and make it current, I can also draw on it, right? But you shouldn't, all right? So layer 0 system file will work with, when we get to blocks, def points, we're just gonna really leave alone. And if we accidentally draw with it, we're going to change our layers, okay? All right. So this is the layer dialog box. I can close it out. If I need to get it back, I click right here and it comes back. I can click on that again and it goes away. Okay. All right. So a few more things about layers and then I'm going to show you how to use them on your screen. Okay. The first thing is you're going to notice here on the layer tool palette right here, there's a lot of the same functionality on that tool palette that you see in the layer dialog box, right? Typical AutoCAD. So I can click on layer properties and I can use this, okay? Or I can come up here to my layer tool palette and I can use this to manipulate my layers, all right? So I can use this drop down and I can select a layer here to make it current. So I can go down to A wall exterior, click, and now you see my A wall exterior is current. Okay, so if I click on the layer properties dialog box, the layer that has this check mark next to it would be current, which means then if I click on line and I start drawing, that's the layer I'm drawing on. Okay, if I hit escape, 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 and I look up here, this little drop down will show me the current layer as well. And if I drop down here, I can change it. Click on line. There we go. Okay. If I hover over some of these items, which I'm not going to go into these hugely today because I feel like I've already talked a lot and I've conveyed a lot of information and maybe you need a second to just digest it, right? But I'm going to, you're going to see here we have a lot of other of the same functions that we see in this layer properties dialog box here. We have on off, we have freeze and thaw, right? Make current, match layer, lock, unlock, okay? So I could also come and drop this down. I could choose lock here. I could freeze or thaw, turn on or off, okay? All right, so when I'm drawing, let me show you the workflow. Okay, number one, we want to create a few layers. So if I, for example, I'm going to come back to this drawing, but I'm going to come over here to start. I'm going to click on new drawing. Okay. If I wanted to start drawing an assignment, right, I give you an assignment, I say draw this. The first thing you would likely do is come up here to layer properties, click on it. You'll see there are no layers created. Okay. I would click on new layer. And we'll just, for very simple, to make this very simple, I'll type wall, hit enter. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure that these are correct. I want it printed, I want it unlocked. I'm going to click on color and wall. Well, what color of layer is wall on? Well, it's a thick layer because we know it's one of those that's cut when the floor plan is created. So we're going to make that color number 1 and hit OK. The next thing I'm going to do is create just a few more. Let's do door. Enter. My sort of there's a document that's going to be posted on Canvas that shows you some common colors for different objects in your drawings, okay? And those are according to the National CAD standard. But let me say this. What I like to see, if you have to guess, right? If there's not a definition on the document I give you, I think the best sort of method to go about picking colors would be, okay, I want to go from thick to medium or heavy to medium. I would just put a step in between 2 different colors. So if you want to go from heavy to medium and you don't know what color that is, I would just, instead of, making it yellow, I would go to green. Puts 2 steps, 1 step between. So 1, then that color, okay? I'm going to hit OK. So my doors are green. Let's do plumbing fixture, PFIX. So I want it to be a step below the green. So instead of cyan, we're going to leave blue out of it. Let's go to magenta. Okay, we'll talk about blue in a second. So I've just created 3 new layers. Now it's time for me to draw. And I want to draw a wall. So I'm going to double click on my layer here. Click on my line and get drawing. Click, move in the direction I want to go. Ortho is F8. 10. I'm in decimal units. I made a mistake, so I need to change to architectural. So 10 foot, enter. Escape, escape, zoom extents. There's my line. Okay. L for line, enter. 10 foot, enter. 4 foot, enter. And I'll come over here and finish it off. Click, escape. Okay, now it's time for me to draw the inside of the walls. Okay, I should have used a polyline to create this so it was all one. But I'm going to use the offset tool, OFFSET, enter, which we talked about last week. 6 inches, enter. Click, 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 click. See, I should have used polyline because now those won't connect. Don't worry, we'll learn how to fix that. Click, click, escape, escape, right? Okay, now I need to draw some plumbing fixtures in here. So I need to change, I'm going to close out my layer dialog box. Quick change of layer, drop down, plumbing fixture. Okay, line, enter, and you would draw whatever you need to draw in here, right? I'm just going to kind of freehand it. There we go, right? Circle. M for move, M, enter, select enter. I'm going to pick a quadrant, move it to that tank. There's my toilet. Okay, you guys get the idea. Okay, so that's how I would go about using my layers. All right, let's see here. What happens if I accidentally put something on the wrong layer? So I'm here and I I'm not perfect at this. You want to try and be cognizant of what you're doing, but I'm kind of bad at layering because I think it takes me a lot of time to go up here, switch layer, come down here and draw. Go up here, switch layer, go down here and draw. So you will see me in a very bad habit, just drawing on layers I probably shouldn't and then changing them after the fact, right? But you can do that, right? So let's pretend, for example, I came in here and I accidentally put this plumbing fixture on the wrong layer. Well, it's very easy to change it. I can select the objects I want to change. I drop down and I pick the layer I want them on and they change. Okay, so I could put this one on layer 0 if I needed to, or while still selected, change it to wall, right? I could select it finally and say, no, it actually was a plumbing fixture. There we go. Okay. So it's very easy to take something, and once you've created it, alter the layer, okay? Any questions so far? Okay. I think we're probably going to end this here, although let me say this. I'm pulling Canvas up here. Let's go to AutoCAD. Here we go. Okay. Under our modules, we have, oh, it's not posted for you guys yet, but I will post it today once I get the video done. I have our layers module here. Okay. Oh, it is posted, but it may not unlock yet. I'll unlock this earlier for you guys. So the overview is here. We have 2 different assignments that we're going to do for this lecture, but you're not going to be able to really do this first template file one. I mean, you probably could do it, but you wouldn't understand why until Wednesday. Okay, so my intent is to finish our lecture on Wednesday, and then you could get going on these assignments. All right. With that said, if you needed to, you could probably skip ahead to this AIA CAD layer assignment. Let me open that up. So here's the assignment in PDF format, and essentially what you're going to be doing is I'm going to give you a file. You're going to create these layers, okay? I'm going to give you and in fact now that I think about it, I'm going to give you this, which is called the pen weight chart. It's our pen weight chart. I need to post this to Canvas. I don't think I have it there yet. You're going to use this color line weight file to create these layers. So you're going to create a layer called A-Ano-Dims. You're going to put dimensions on it, and the line weight is going to be 0.35 millimeter. All right. Well, on the line weight chart, okay, we have colors, we have pens, and at the bottom, 0.35 millimeter is pen number 3. Pen number 3 is right there. Okay. If I go to AutoCAD, okay, when I go to my layered properties, if I click on color here, pen number 3, see how it's in index color 1, 2, 3. What color is that? Green, right? So pen number 3 is green. This assignment will kind of give you a roundabout way of learning the, sorry guys, there we go. It will give you a roundabout way of defining these. So it says 0.35, which is, you're like, well, what's 0.35? Well, 0.35 is pen number 3. You can see that at the bottom. Well, what color is that? I don't know, right? Well, you have to then go to AutoCAD and figure out what color that is here, okay? So that's going to be part of your assignment. And then the other will be, we're going to create a template file, which we'll talk about next time, okay? I'm going to give you a blank file that looks like the one we have in class, and you're going to take these layers that you first define, and you're going to assign them to all of the objects in here, okay? And this blank file is this drawing right here, okay? So you're going to download that, you're going to open it, and hopefully, if I pick the right one, it doesn't have any layer association. Oh, it does, but they're not right. Ooh, you know what? Let me repost this. I'm just going to make it all on layer 0 for you, but because this is not right, and I don't want to confuse you. Because essentially what you're going to do is you're going to grab these lines, and you're going to change them to whatever layer is appropriate with the correct color. Well, you guys can't get to it anyway yet, but I'm going to just make this all on layer 0. So essentially, your assignment, the first part, one of the parts, will be to take this drawing and assign all the correct layers to it, okay? And you do that by clicking on an object, dropping down, and assigning it to whatever it needs to be, okay? Far as definition goes, this is a door. I think you guys likely know this, but this is a door, right? These are walls. These right here, including this mark, this symbol, this is a window. These are the stairs, okay? Bathtub, these are all plumbing fixtures. Sink, stove. This line right here shows the countertop, okay? These are dimensions. So if it says put the dimensions on this layer, you're going to pick them and you're going to put them there, okay? All right. Any questions about any of that? Okay, I'm gonna get our video posted for this, and then I'll post the assignment maybe a couple hours once I get all of that settled. I'll repost this file, and then you can get going at least on this part, okay? I mean, honestly, if you read this one, you probably could do it without understanding why, right? But we'll talk about a template file on Wednesday, and we'll also talk about how we, as an industry, name our layers, because it's kind of a complicated topic, okay? All right, any final questions at all? All right, thanks, guys.